You are tuned in to the High at 9 News Hour, where you will hear from cannabis industry experts and professionals from around the country talk about important topics while shining light on global issues and discussing cannabis as it relates to politics, regulation and reform, data and technology, science, research and medicine, family and parenting, art, celebs and entertainment, fitness, sports, mental health and wellness, and plant-based medicines and enthogenics. Together, we are building a stronger community, fighting the stigma and creating change. With your hosts, Jason Beck, Rico Lamitte, and Nichole West, joined by special industry expert correspondents from around the country and daily antics brought to you by Cannabis. Coming to you live Monday through Friday at 9 a.m. Pacific Time. Thank you for getting high at 9 with us.
Oh, yeah. Good morning, everybody. That's right. It's Wednesday, September 14th. And thank you so much for joining us and getting high at 9 with us. It's also high noon on the East Coast. And please remember to like, share, and subscribe to us on all social media platforms. We're live every Monday through Friday on YouTube and audio only on Clubhouse. And if you're on Clubhouse, you can also participate in the show by raising your hand if you have a brief comment on the story most recently presented. But without further ado, let's pay a quick bill so we can get right back to some news.
At True Classic OG, we live by one motto: stay true. We stay true to our legacy cut of True OG that's always fresh, piney, gassy, and delicious. We represent the spirit, hustle, and diversity of our great city of Angels. And we stay true to the spirit of this plant, doing everything in-house to ensure that you get the highest quality and consistency with every batch. And that's what's made us LA's favorite OG. True Classic OG. Stay true, Los Angeles.
Oh, yeah. Hope everyone is having an amazing day today. But nonetheless, we have the man, the myth, the legend. That's right. The dope dad himself, Rico Lamitte, coming up first today. When he's not changing diapers or chasing babies, running around picking boogers and flinging things across the house, you can also find him at TEDx conventions, babysitting grown-ass adults, changing their diapers too on a regular basis. All the turds, from the Chads and Brads in the world. And when he's not doing any of that, that's right, he'll be brushing up on his football skills when he constantly practices backpedaling on safe banking on a regular basis. That's right, it is the dope dad himself, Rico Lamitte.
Oh, yeah, that was an amazing intro, Jason. And thank you all to the audience for getting high at 9 with us yet again. My headline today is a sad yet inspirational one coming from NBC News. It was loudly broadcast across a bunch of different networks this week. Elias Theodorou, former UFC fighter and cannabis advocate, he died of cancer at 34 years old this week on Monday. So professional mixed martial arts fighter Elias the Spartan Theodorou, a well-known and outspoken advocate who fought for athletes everywhere to gain access to cannabis. He died Monday at just 34 years young after losing a battle with stage 4 colon cancer. Back in 2020, Elias Theodorou became the first pro athlete in North America to receive a therapeutic use exemption for medical cannabis from the British Columbia Athletic Commission in Canada. At the time, he was diagnosed with bilateral neuropathy, a result of damage to the nerves located outside the brain and spinal cord, and said he used cannabis to mitigate the pain and discomfort he felt regularly. The Canadian MMA fighter was granted exemptions from the British Columbia and Colorado, but the UFC denied him an exemption during the time fighting for the MMA giant, forcing him into lower leagues, where he became a folk hero after winning UFC's Ultimate Fighter reality show and regularly speaking out publicly against opioids pushed on athletes even at the highest levels. January 2021, after vocal backlash from several top-tier fighters echoing Theodorou's complaints, the UFC reluctantly announced that it would be changing its policy allowing cannabis for in-competition athletes unless there was evidence they did so for performance-enhancing purposes. Though he would never rise to the level of fighting on another major UFC fight card before passing this week, Theodoro's advocacy pushed the needle just enough to force MMA giant's hand in favor of plants over pills, and it may go down as his greatest career victory, and one for top-tier athletes everywhere. It should be noted the UFC is not bound by the World Anti-Doping Code, which lists THC as a banned substance, a prohibited substance. And I found a quote from the late great fighter from 2020 after receiving his exemption that read, "They kept on telling me to take more prescription drugs when my doctor and I knew that cannabis was right for me. They were telling me to take antidepressants and opioids, all while ironically or sadly having a campaign about the opioid crisis." Man, as a former athlete who struggled most of his adult life with addiction stemming from exactly what Elias put it all on the line for in his prime, I got nothing but respect for the dude and the legacy that he left. It's also why I covered his exemption victory last year while some of us were still on our last news show. Combat sports are a completely different beast, and even though many would argue the violence in football might be the closest that we can see in connection to that, I don't think I've ever seen a dude on the field get a fractured orbital from multiple knees to the head. I'm not a doctor, but knowing what I do know, cannabis might be the best remedy around for combat athletes and their recovery, and the fact that most now have access to quality meds for recovery at the highest levels without having to hide their consumption, the Spartan is the man to thank. So hopefully Elias Theodoro's legacy of fighting for what he believed in and knew was right for his body not only lives on in the world of MMA and combat sports, but also the rest of the athletic world, despite what WADA and the hurdle that we saw and presented in yesterday's news. And I'm going to do a quick, because we have an extra spot today, I'm going to do a quick run through of the second story from Mecca King. My good friend Mecca King from Cash Color Cannabis down in Atlanta. He did this one for Leafly. I'm just honoring Elias Theodoro's legacy, and then just sort of running through the current combat athletes, current and retired combat athletes that are also pushing for the plant. Just to run through their names real quick. Former MMA champions and brothers Nate and Nick Diaz for THC and CBD. For CBD, alone, Evan Holyfield, the son of Evander Holyfield. He has his own CBD brand, and he's a boxer out of Atlanta as well. Anthony Joshua, boxer out of a British boxer, former two-time champion. He's a huge pusher of CBD. Ric Flair, he just signed a big deal with Mike Tyson. That's the next one, Mike Tyson as well. They're both pushing THC and CBD gummies and flower. Shannon Briggs, boxer, who's huge in the late 90s to early and mid 2000s. He has a CBD line too. Kamaru Usman, he just had a major fight. He actually lost, but he just had a major fight, and he's one of the biggest champion MMA fighters in the world, and he's a big supporter of CBD, and he's very vocal about it. Chris Algieri, he's a big-time boxer as well. I don't know if he's a current right now, but he's a huge supporter of THC. He has his own THC and CBD brand as well. I guess it's the last one. He is an undefeated super lightweight. Arnold Barboza Jr. was knocked out by Mikey Williams. He has a CBD UK brand too. So big ups to everybody in the combat sports world, continuing to push for CBD, continuing to push for THC and cannabinoid therapy over opioids. And hopefully we can get the same movement going for the rest of the sports world. This is Rico Lamitte, Dopest Dad on the Street, and love to hear from everybody else on this sad yet inspiring story.
I mean, the story is sad, bro.
Yeah.
It's very sad. Very, very sad. Rest in peace to this amazing fighter.
Yeah, he had an excellent legacy he left behind, though, man. Dude put it all on the line at the peak of his prowess to fight for the plant, and he actually got kicked out of the UFC for doing that. And because he got the exemption, the first to have an exemption on that level in Canada, and then he started fighting in Colorado, UFC ended up following suit, and now athletes in the UFC can do the same thing.
What type of cancer did he have, Rico?
He died of stage 4 colon cancer.
Oof. And it really sucks to think about colon cancer in general when we talk about these fighters and like all the supplements and all the things that they're constantly having to take. Like that, doesn't necessarily sound, it isn't necessarily, surprising that they would end up with terrible gastrointestinal issues with all the things that, like, between like an energy drink and like the weight gain, the weight loss, the, the bulk, the lean, all the things that they're constantly doing to their bodies. And I said this the other day, I think it's really fucking sad what we do to athletes for our own entertainment. And how far that it gets pushed,
It is, and fellas, get a colonoscopy, man. Get your oil checked. I know it's very taboo and everything, especially Black men. I think it's like one, it's a crazy statistic. I don't know if Dr. Felicia is on with us today. I think it's like a crazy statistic, like 1 in 6 Black men will contract colon cancer.
Yeah, isn't 34 pretty young?
At 34 years old, that's just unacceptable at 34. Like,
yes.
And also, frankly, colon cancer is supposed to be one of those cancers that are able
very
to be
curable
early on.
Yeah, but dudes don't want to. Dudes don't want to get a colonoscopy because it's taboo.
They don't want to have those fingers up their butts, bro. The little, one of those.
I mean,
but we do have Dr. Felicia in the audience in the clubhouse room to comment on this.
Good morning, everyone. That he is very, very young to die of colon cancer. I suspect he may have had a hereditary type of cancer that can manifest in the 30s. But in general, there has been an increase in colon cancer in young people in general. So they've moved the guidelines from age 50 to 45. So just keep that in mind. You should get your colonoscopy at 45. But yeah, for him to come down with that at that early age, it's probably part hereditary. I just wonder if he could have still been here if he had used cannabis therapeutically to deal with the cancer in addition to his chemotherapy or radiation or whatever he received. I'm not saying that cannabis can cure cancer because that's an anecdotal kind of thing, and it's recommended by most physicians who recommend cannabis that you use it with your cancer treatment. You don't have to wait until you've got neuropathy or treating some side effect of your treatment. If it's okay with your oncologist, go ahead and use it while you're receiving your other conventional therapies. But yeah, he was very young to have colon cancer, and it's probably partly hereditary.
I definitely want to take a second, and I haven't done it in a while, to big up suppositories in this conversation, because a lot of people don't want to have that conversation because it's awkward. But anal and vaginal suppositories, when we're talking about colon cancer, prostate cancer, cervical cancer, getting the medicine as close to the problem as possible directly is huge. And so, have that conversation. There's not a ton of companies making the suppositories, but it is a really important product on the market right now, especially when we're talking the food we eat is fucking garbage. Colon cancer is getting worse and worse and worse because we're fucking poisoning our people. And so it's like, this is going to become a bigger and bigger problem. So we need to become more and more comfortable with checking, like Rico said, our oil.
Yes, Dr. Felicia, Zaza in the chat, and I have the same question as well, is asking, how much of this do you believe has to do with your daily diet?
I think it has a lot.
Everything. You eat 2-3 times a day. And if you're eating the standard American diet that's full of pesticides and genetically modified organisms and radiation and the air and water, all of that, in my opinion, is probably contributing to the earlier age onset of colon cancer. And there's also an increase in thyroid cancer in Black women at a younger age as well. So I strongly believe it's our diet, because that's the thing that we're doing multiple times a day.
Yes, and when I had my tumors, right? When I had my tumors, after my recovery time from all of that, and I have gout as well. I completely changed my diet. My skin feels better. I hardly have any gout attacks or anything like that. I haven't, like, knock on wood, I haven't had any real issues with any cancer like returning to my body or anything, because it is hereditary on both sides of my family. It does fall on your diet. I'm about like 90 90% pescatarian, mostly vegetarian and vegan in my diet now, and I feel a lot better than I did at 30 years old, and I'm damn near 40. I'm a couple months off of 40, so I think it's 80% diet, and then the rest is like hereditary and what you're around, what you expose yourself to, and stress as well.
So that's why they say you are what you eat.
Absolutely.
Yes, indeed.
Absolutely.
Yep, let food be your medicine. Let food be your medicine.
And it's also really important too that we, especially athletes, tend to downplay symptomology. We're taught to be tough.
Mhm.
I played all the way at college sports, so you get seriously hurt, and the first question is, can you still play? Right? Can you still go? And in an athlete's mind, we're trained to fight through any discomfort, and so
That's right.
it's something that young people, especially in their 30s, if you're a professional athlete, you ignore. You're used to hurting, right?
Yeah.
And
See, I'm with you
Well,
on that.
not only
Mandy.
are you used to hurting, but you've probably taken some sort of medication for pain to cover up your elbow that has been bothering you since you were 12, right? And now you're 30, but you don't realize that pain medicine that's covering up your elbow is also covering up the pain in your colon that you're not feeling for years. And then finally you're like, oh, I'm going to do a detox. And then you're like, my whole body's falling apart. How long has this been happening?
Yeah, or you're that close to a big contract, and you know what? And you're like, you just want to ignore this, ignore it, and get that big fucking check. Sometimes it ain't worth it. And big ups to the young guys I've seen in the NFL recently quitting early on in their career because they had too many concussions or because they are fucking up their body. They see a lot of these symptoms, and we're getting a lot better information out there. So we got to keep educating the younger people. It doesn't matter if you die, like it does not matter. Period. Nothing matters. You can't take any of that shit to the grave with you.
And I am a big believer, though, however, that pain is nothing more than weakness leaving your body.
Anyways, that's a perfect way for us to segue into the strongest man in America, Mr. Jason Beck. The person that deals out and deals with the most pain of any person by being the biggest pain in all of our asses and being the member of any Republican Party that might piss off a lib nearby. Jason Beck, longest running retailer in the history of regulated cannabis globally, and also my favorite pain in the ass. Jason,
yes,
happy
that's
Wednesday.
right.
What do you have for us?
Oh, man, everyone's favorite pain in the ass. That's right. Because I have another pain in the ass. It's these people that perpetuate fake news. Because my story today comes out of San Bernardino, a.k.a. San Bernardino, where the San Bernardino Sheriff's cannabis claims are unsubstantiated. The September 7th edition of the NBC broadcast features a report on human trafficking in the cannabis industry. Before the report came the first surprise for cannabis industry pros when Lester Holt even prefaced it with the claim of a new trend from law enforcement. That's right. That trend, you ask? It's victims of human trafficking were growing cannabis that ended up on the shelves of permitted California dispensaries. Cut to NBC's crew on a ride along with the sheriff in the Mojave Desert on a raid. The property features a spread of greenhouses and a voiceover with claims of illegal marijuana being grown with illegal methods per the sheriff. Next, the package cuts to the officer in charge of the raid, Lieutenant Mark Bracco. The sheriff takes multiple people into custody, with Bracco noting these cultivators themselves might be the victims of human trafficking. The Mandarin-speaking cultivation team tells the crew they all left restaurant jobs after finding the gig on a website, suggesting at least some degree of an autonomy and freedom. But then they note they haven't been paid yet. This can be typical in underground operations, with everyone getting cashed out after the harvest. After a tour of the housing conditions, the camera cuts back to Baco noting in a quote, "This product will end up in a dispensary." And then he's asked if he means a legal dispensary, to which he replies, both legal and illegal. That's followed up with him being asked to clarify if consumers can walk into a dispensary and find products grown by victims of human trafficking. And he replies, yes. And he says, if you look at the number of legalized grow locations for the state, there's not enough of those to funnel product for the legal dispensaries. So over 70 to 80% of marijuana at your dispensary is illegally cultivated. We asked the Department of Cannabis Control for its takes on the comments from Bracco, and in a quote, they say, no information from our licensing, compliance, or enforcement divisions, and mind you, this is the DCC saying this, divisions corroborate these claims. Unsubstantiated claims destroy public confidence in the legal cannabis market and do a disservice to the thousands of businesses working to follow the law. Our enforcement division works closely with federal, state, and local partners, including the San Bernardino Sheriff's Department, and will continue to provide coordinated resources and support to aid in their efforts to combat the illegal market. The state told LA Weekly basically that, and most experts in the industry agree the exact opposite of what the sheriff's claim is happening. The marketplace is so flooded with legal product that it has crashed the marketplace of cannabis, and many farmers chose not to plant this year because it would not be worth their time. The flood of products on the adult use market is the main point of financial strife for the legacy communities that backbone California's market for decades. It is undeniable that there has been a true drought since 2019, and there is a ton of pot left over annually. While interstate and international commerce eventually will change the game, right now California definitely has too much of its own legal weed. And then they say, is illegally grown cannabis appearing on dispensary shelves a big issue? They say highly doubtful. But legal marijuana is much more likely to get backdoored to marketplaces like Illinois and New York, where it's worth 3 times its value in California. Furthermore, the idea that it would be grown using illegal methods in a desert greenhouse and then pass the checks and balances of California's adult use market is just baffling. This isn't to dismiss the idea that there are people in bad situations working in cannabis cultivation in California, but that product making it to the legal market is unlikely when it's worth more with fewer hurdles in many places right now. And we asked the San Bernardino County Sheriff's Department for some background on Backos after our initial press time. They replied they stand by the information provided as a result of thousands of investigations, years of professional experience, education, and training. So the San Bernardino Sheriff's Department is standing by their claims that illicit cannabis makes it into the legal market, which everyone in cannabis knows is nothing but trash and BS and fake news. And this is Jason Beck reporting for the High at 9 News Hour.
All right, so I have one like, I guess, devil's advocate statement is some of that product might make it into regulated dispensaries in other states. Not as these new states come on, like a good example, like Oklahoma. How much of that weed was actually being grown in Oklahoma for the first year, right? Like,
good old Oklahoma.
But now, obviously,
Zero.
there's more than enough weed in Oklahoma. Nobody's shipping packs to the regulated stores in Oklahoma anymore. But like, when we're having the conversation of whether or not this could end up in a regulated dispensary, I agree that it's not going to end up in a California regulated dispensary because there's so much product on the regulated market that it's like the article says going out the back door. But on these up and coming new states where weed's just expected to fucking like be there somehow, and like, you know, like when they start the new state and you're just like, oh, okay, and then there were plants. Right? You're just like, and then there were plants. And that's the whole conversation. And you're like,
so
well,
I
what
guess
do you mean?
I guess in this situation, the pound came before the seed.
I think in this situation,
Chicken before the egg.
It's definitely, it's important to note when we're having that conversation that it's not California that it's happening, where it would end up in the regulated market. But it's not to say that it couldn't end up in the regulated market, but 99% of that is, you know.
I mean,
sure
how do you get trap weed into Metric to actually be sold on a shelf? I'm
because when
confused by
Metric
that.
first started, all you had to do was tell Metric how much weed you had. There is a day when Metric turns on where you tell Metric how much weed you have, and that every state and every time Metric's come online has been like, okay, so here's your tags. Tell us what you've got. That day, that's a day, right? And so the idea is, where did all of that fucking weed come from?
I mean, big
That's
ups to
all I'm asking.
big ups to the
Yeah.
internet. Big ups to the internet and for outing all these cops and their lies
Fuck yeah.
going forward, because the next generation of kids are not going to trust not one fucking cop.
Oh,
Not
bro,
one.
that's for sure. But shout out to Jimmy Devine for covering this for LA Weekly.
Jimmy Devine.
Thank you, Jimmy.
Big love, man. He's excellent. Big shout out to Jimmy out there.
Yeah, California is ruining weed, like just ruining it. Ruining
Capitalism is ruining weed.
Oh.
let's keep it a buck. Like
Quote
unquote free market is not free. It is for sale.
Like, yeah, right? Like, is Florida doing a better job, Mandy?
I mean,
No.
I think everybody's doing a better job.
Everyone's, and that's why Rico's statement is capitalism is ruining.
So
weed. You're right.
basically, you guys are all saying that New York is doing a better job than California.
Listen,
no, I'm backing Rico's conversation that's saying capitalism is. It's not just California. California was just the fastest because we were the biggest. We were doing it the longest. We've been commercially growing weed for like the longest amount of time of any state out of all 50 states. So like our race has been much more expedited. We see the problems quicker here because we get to them quicker here because I mean, math, right? Data.
Yeah. Geometry.
Well, there's 100 attempts, and then in
Social
California,
studies.
there's 1 million attempts. We're going to figure it out a lot quicker.
Yes,
We're going to figure out how to fuck it up faster. We're going to figure out how to not fail, hopefully faster.
I don't think California has figured out how to fix anything faster, though.
No, that's not. No one's figured out how to fix anything.
Figured out how to fuck it up.
Yes, I don't think anyone's figured out how to fix it faster. In general.
I think
I don't think anyone's looking for that at this point.
Yeah, people have figured out how to fix it, but the problem is egos and capitalism, egos and fucking greed. Like straight up, like people have too much hubris to be like, okay, I'm not good at absolutely everything. I need to stay in my lane, and they just have this kingpin complex, and they want to fucking take over everything. They lose it all, and then these big. Is on both ends of the spectrum there too. Like the legacy operators, they don't want to give up anything that they've worked for, sometimes generationally. And then these newbies in here, the MSOs and the Chads, Brads, and Karens in there, they want to come in. Like, yes, you have your business acumen together. You know how to run a business, but you don't know shit about the trap. You don't know shit about the legacy game here. And they need to break down and be like, okay, you need to humble yourselves on both ends. So there are actual like ways for it to work, but the problem is hubris, ego, and greed.
But we also have to be very real when saying cannabis cultivation in California has had some version of human trafficking involved for a very fucking long time in a lot of places. Yeah. And I'm not saying all the farmers, it's a very small amount, but there has been some version of human trafficking as long as I've been pushing weed, and I as long as I've been an adult, and I know that for a fact. And I've seen some fucked up situations. So making sure that we don't make light of the reality that cannabis has brought human trafficking to California on these, in the middle of the conditions that they get put in, the stories that they get told, it's fucked up. It's like it's terrible, and it is happening. But I don't think it's ending up in our stores.
I agree wholeheartedly with you, Nicole, like on that. But I have to say, like, also, where do you think they got that model from? You just go right up the 101 and you see like people picking those strawberries. You think those people are supposed to be here? You think those people are getting
no, but that's the reason why labor unions exist, and that's the reason why they have to go into those businesses.
I was agreeing.
No,
with
I
you.
don't think that they're the only ones by any means. But like when it's illicit, it's a lot easier to hide it, right? When the whole thing's illegal, like versus if you're picking strawberries and like the labor union shows up and they're like, "Hey, where do you guys live? Like, are you getting paychecks?"
I am a human being. I self-identify as a human being. And I know I've been in a lot of traffic with a lot of weed over the years.
Bro. Just introduce me. Shut the fuck up, bro.
Just think about trafficking that has happened in the Trimigrant world and up in the Emerald Triangle, and the fact that area has the most missing persons of any city in the entire U.S.
Recorded, yeah.
It's
all right. So let's just keep it moving. Let's
Your
get
turn.
something. Hopefully, Nicole has a little something uplifting for us now. But she sacrificed 30 days of her own freedom in Colorado in Colorado jail so you wouldn't have to. And she's been on a mission ever since, making sure others never make the same compliance mistakes that she did. Now a cannabis business consultant that does way more than just showing up daily to get hyphy for spreadsheets. In her spare time, she enjoys busting bullshit and is currently working on that doctorate in dirtbag psychology at Long Beach Community College. Coming to the stage next, you know who it is. Self-described general data bitch herself, Nichole West.
Dirtbag psychology. I love that. I do love that. So my headline today is actually coming out of Marijuana Moment, but I want to start this whole story by saying my photograph is in 2 of our articles today. A photograph that I took 7 years ago. And I'm going to show you all. Can we get a screen share real quick? See down at the bottom of that gentleman's shirt? What does that say? It says Sweet Leaf. That was at a Sweet Leaf dispensary in Portland. That's Vincent Porpiglia's Terrible Hands and my former boss at that location. And I just always love when this photo shows up because I see it literally everywhere. And it's also the photo that is in Gretchen's headline. So a little fun, uplifting part of my morning was seeing my picture in all of our headlines. My headline today is actually coming out of Marijuana Moment, where the Treasury asks White House to approve the plan on collecting marijuana business banking data. So this is huge. First of all, as a self-proclaimed data bitch, I'm all about numbers and I'm all about using them to explain why we are winning or why we are failing and how we can change that. And so the U.S. Treasury Department has formally sent the White House its proposal to start collecting data on marijuana businesses from banks. Alongside industries it's already tracking, like liquor stores, convenience stores, casinos, and car dealers, as a part of ongoing efforts. So the U.S. Treasury Department has formally sent the White House its proposal to start collecting data on. And so in a notice published in the Federal Register last week, Treasury Office of the Comptroller of the Currency, OCC, said that it has completed its initial procedural steps on the plan and will be accepting final round of public comments as the White House Office, Management and Budget, or the OMB, conducts its review. The OCC first announced its proposal in June, saying that it plans to track marijuana businesses as a part of its annual risk summary form, or RSF, that need to be filed by financial institutions. It's viewed as another sign of federal government's recognition of the state legal cannabis market, even as marijuana remains a federally controlled substance. The RSF collects data about different products, services, and customers and geographics. And the latest notice says, to that end, the Treasury said that it wants to add marijuana-related businesses to the list of marks that it monitors, as well as 5 other new categories, such as crypto assets and ATM operations, which, wow, ATM, it took us that long. Anyway, so there's a form that gets submitted in by the banks, and they have to list all the different types of businesses that are being banked in that business. And now line number 11 in the domestic customers list for the MLR RSF from the Office of Comptroller of the Currency now has marijuana-related businesses as a part of that. I'm curious to know whether or not it's actually going to be in regards to also ancillary businesses and how they're going to be tracking that, and if they're getting really granular on that as well. The department said that money laundering risk system enhances the ability of examiners and bank management to identify and evaluate risks that are associated with banks, products, services, and customer locations. A final public comment period on the proposed changes is open through October 11th. In August, the National Cannabis Industry Association, or the NCIA, submitted a comment following the proposal's initial announcement. It said that the organization is pleased to see the OCC recognize the impact of marijuana-related businesses and are having on our financial system. It's not immediately clear how the information collected on the RSF, which, if approved, will ask for financial services to provide a report on the number of their marijuana businesses that accounts and their overall volume is analyzed by and disseminated by the OCC after being submitted by banks. But the new notice says that the data allows the agency to better identify those institutions and areas within institutions that may pose heightened risk and allocate examination resources accordingly. To me, this kind of sounds like the banks having to snitch themselves out, but I'm not 100% sure. So I'm super curious to hear what Gretchen and Jason and Rico, who all have some pretty strong opinions about banking and data in regards to cannabis and Washington, and really anybody else on the stage or anyone in the audience. What do you guys have to say about the White House's data collection on banking? Is it going to get these banks in trouble, or is it going to move the needle forward? And I'm Nichole West, getting high at 9 with y'all.
I mean, the smartest thing for the Treasury Department to do is submit a one-page page back saying, basically, because there is no safe banking, we have no data on cannabis banking, and just leave it at that.
That's a lie, and then you're lying to the government.
Isn't there?
No,
isn't
that's
there
the
a
government
word?
lying to itself, Rico.
Isn't there a word that starts with P that would be? Wouldn't you get in some P words?
I semi agree with Jason. Frankly, I mean, if it's not federally acknowledged, fuck them. Don't give them the data.
Exactly.
However, it is a good thing for the Treasury Department to acknowledge that cannabis businesses exist and want to start collecting data.
Well, and if everyone was honest, there would be so many that it could help us, right? But only some people are going to be honest.
Nothing gets done in Washington without data and analysis and, you know, the OMB and everyone getting fucking involved and actually passing legislation and seeing what the financial benefit to the government is for passing these kinds of things. So we need to start collecting data on
if
this
we saw how
industry.
much money.
But they know that. They know how much money they collect from 280E. They know how much money they collect from 280E. Yes, they do.
Bro, they don't know how much money is in the system. How much money is attached to a bank that right now is associated with weed. They don't know that. They know how much money that they have for taxes. They don't know how much money is still in the ether.
Jason, you are very sweet and naive if you really think the federal government knows what the other side of the federal government is doing. These guys do not talk to each other.
I'm just saying it's not hard to extrapolate, to figure out, okay? It's not that difficult.
I disagree. I mean, frankly, these folks do not talk to each other. There's no systems in place for them to figure this sort of thing out.
I'm not saying I agree with you on that, Gretchen, but what I'm saying is that for them to figure it out based off of 280E metric is not that difficult to figure out. I mean,
but that's not a good number.
Third grade mathematician could figure that out.
You're wrong.
Jason,
it's not a good number.
It applies to all sorts of illegal substances, not just cannabis. So you can't just use it to.
Well, first of all, I think the only illegal substance that's paying taxes is cannabis.
Well, and to believe that, frankly, people are paying their taxes correctly and doing this right.
That part,
we're not even going to touch that. That's a whole nother can of worms to open up.
Exactly. So you can't use that as your can of worms to measure a goddamn thing.
Yes,
but that's the data that they have.
Into a disclaimer.
That's the data that they have, Gretchen.
But that's not good data. Dirty data in is dirty data out. So we're giving them fucking bad data. You're wrong, Jason. Gretchen's right. It's not good. There's no good. The 280E answer is not the right answer because first of all, people don't even understand what the fuck 280E means. The amount of people that you try to explain it to that are in this industry that are just like, my lawyer handles that. Like, no.
That's the wrong answer. If you ever say
I know that. I know that. But you don't understand how many people that is.
You should not be running a cannabis company if that's your answer.
The big picture is you have one side, a major part of the federal government now, acknowledging cannabis businesses, looking for data. That is a good thing, and that's how we need to look at it.
It's positive.
I just don't know, man. When the government asks me for information, like my skin starts.
Do you hang up on the census people?
I don't hang up on the census people.
The census people are very different than all the other government collection people.
I love hearing that from a conservative, Jason. Thank you.
I think everyone should fill out the census, whether you're a U.S. citizen or not. You need to fill that out because that is basically what quantifies how many hospital beds, how much federal funding goes for different things within each different district. So it's very important that all Americans, regardless of anything, fill out their census.
So this is just a deeper
I gotta
census.
Give a round of applause for Jason Beck saying that shit as a Republican.
Fill out your census.
Yes, indeed.
The census does not share information with any other government branch.
Anyways, the thoughts and opinions and general shade thrown on the High at 9 News are those of the individual speakers, not those of any other speaker or its followers. The statements made do not constitute legal or accounting advice, and the speakers make no representation regarding the legal status of any substance, country, area, territory, or authority. These expressed in this room do not establish fiduciary relationships. Our sponsors do not apply, constitute the endorsement by us, expression whatsoever, any opinion of any of the speakers or anyone on stage. If you're an easily offended person, the show is probably not for you. Also, fuck off.
Flying into LAX and you want to taste some of the best weed in the world? Then stop by LAXCC, the closest dispensary to LAX, located at 8332 Lincoln Boulevard and open from 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. 7 days a week. Always make LAXCC your first stop when you touch down in LA and score like a winner. And don't forget to tell them I sent you and mention that you'd like to get high at 9 for 10% off your full order.
She splits her time evenly between cooking delicious treats and battling it out on K Street with pot-loving libs across the aisle. She's a full-time, feisty, redheaded conservative with claimed Mayflower roots and an unhealthy love for safe banking and giving up the government all the information that you can, because you know what? We should trust them. Coming to the stage next, the founder of Panoptic Strategies and our very own Washington insider, Gretchen Gailey. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Rico. My Mayflower roots are verified, unlike some of Jason's facts. My headline is coming from Marijuana Moment. And my headline is about my home state of Pennsylvania. GOP Pennsylvania Senator previews bill to give independent marijuana growers permits to sell directly to patients. A Republican Pennsylvania senator says he will soon be introducing a bill to give independent in-state medical marijuana growers a chance to sell directly to patients, a reform he says is much needed and increased industry consolidation. In a co-sponsorship memo circulated last week, Senator Chris Gebhardt said that his legislation would create a new permitting process, allowing any Pennsylvania-based independent cannabis grower processor to open dispensaries as vertically integrated businesses. Pennsylvania's medical marijuana law currently says that only 25 businesses can be licensed for medical marijuana growing and processing, and only 5 of those licenses can sell directly to patients through vertically integrated dispensaries. Gebhardt said the Department of Health's current permitting rules have created an unfair system for getting products to patients. The most even-handed solution to this problem would be to issue 2 permits to all of the independent Pennsylvania-based growers processors who do not currently have one. This will create a free and fair market and will allow these businesses to operate on the same playing field as their competitors. While Pennsylvania has yet to enact adult use legalization, there's a growing expectation that the state will eventually follow others in the region and begin allowing recreational sales. Some businesses are feeling the strain as anticipation about the policy change builds, especially as wholesale marijuana prices drop and multi-state operators continue to acquire smaller businesses. Pennsylvania's cannabis law additionally says businesses with a retail permit can't operate more than 15 dispensaries, but this trend of company acquisitions has given certain stakeholders more influence in the industry. A spokesperson for the health department told the Tribune Democrat in July that while the state's medical cannabis law does set permit limits, regulators can't block equity transfers by permit holders, including those used by multi-state operators in the medical marijuana industry. Gebhardt's proposal would seek to mitigate the economic pressure for independent growers and processors by giving them the option to obtain a secondary permit to sell the product they grow, rather than to sell to licensed distributors. Marijuana policy has also become a key campaign issue in Pennsylvania ahead of the November midterm elections, especially with respect to races for governor and a U.S. Senate seat. Governor Tom Wolf came out in support of legalization earlier in his term, a decision partly influenced by the advocacy of his lieutenant governor, John Fetterman, and has included a call to implement the reform in his budget proposal this year. Now the race to replace Wolf is between pro-legalization Attorney General Josh Shapiro, the Democratic nominee, and State Senator Doug Mastriano, who is strongly against the reform, calling legalization a stupid idea that has negatively impacted other states. I like where this Republican senator in Pennsylvania is going. I think that it was a mistake by Pennsylvania to set up the licenses that the way they did, allowing only 5 licenses for vertically integrated operators. At the beginning of the time, they called these super licenses. I'm saddened that Marijuana Moment didn't get down into really the breakdown of what is considered an independent grower processor. To the best of my knowledge, and please anybody correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe there is only one license holder left in the state of Pennsylvania that is not affiliated with an MSO. So I know that GTI and Curaleaf are the biggest license holders there currently. Something has to change. If you want to see the free market and small independent guys get ahead in this state, they definitely need to let them to start growing and selling to dispensaries or opening their own dispensaries to make this work. This is Gretchen for State Cannabis. Or what are we now? High at 9 News.
High at 9 News, Gretchen. And this is a GOP bill, right?
It is proposed by a GOP senator because we all love the free market and capitalism.
That's right. Direct to consumer, proposed by Republicans. Remember that, Democrats.
I
I like the ability and the idea of like the micro brew or the micro business in cannabis as like a real way for small, especially smaller towns. Like if it's not, you know, the big cities, like that's the only way that you're going to be able to have like a good quality like product always available. Because first of all, the good products from the big cities don't want to drive all the way out in the middle of fucking nowhere. So it's like that curated model of like being able to grow that product and sell it directly. That's the reason why little small towns have good beer available at their breweries, because it's a small brewery in that little town that makes their beers and you get to go buy it directly from the people that make it. And so like that reality needs to exist everywhere. And like it sounds like at expeditious rates in Pennsylvania.
There was a huge push for that model last year. It kind of
Michigan
went away.
has it. Michigan has it. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, I know there's a bunch of like the newer states, a lot of the emerging markets in the United States we're pushing for that initially, but we just haven't really heard much about it since last year. I don't know, has there been any updates from any other states? I know Michigan's been a big pusher of that. I know a lot of other states, California included, were saying that they were going to be trying to go towards a more independent model like that, but I really haven't heard anything over the last like 6 months or so.
I feel like the micro businesses are a few of the businesses that I see that like as a small business are going to be able to succeed though. Honestly, like the ones that are doing things well, as a small business, it, you know, gives you that efficiencies as well to be able to be competitive and sell products, you know, at a competitive rate because you're cultivating or manufacturing them yourselves. I think it's key for small businesses and especially some of these small farmers to be able to survive, because if you put 6 fucking middlemen between you and your outdoor crop, like there's no money to be made. And so, you know, I think the tasting rooms, the way that Napa exists with wineries, like that should be a thing in cannabis here. Like we should be able to take and just stop at farms and be like, let me smoke that, let me try that, and like have a little bus that's like driving us around and like, we're going to do 20 farms today. Like that should be a thing. They made it so that California pretty much can't do that. You can't charge to have people on in that way technically, but they should be able to.
What do you think
really
is hampering
interested
progress of that?
I'm really interested to hear what Mandy has to say in regards to this, because she has a brand, female ran brand, and a female ran delivery service that is in Sacramento, which I would consider a rural part of California.
Do you have your micro business license too, Mandy?
Sacramento is not rural, first of all. And clearly you haven't been here enough, Jason.
I said I would consider it rural. I mean, they still have horses and carriages and like horses pooping on the ground and shit.
It's the heat wave fleece rocking capital of the world.
I know you're hanging out at, but certainly isn't where all the dispensaries are.
Do you have your micro license too?
Say that again?
Do you have your micro business license as well?
No, I do not have a micro business license.
Gretchen, did you say only one was not an MSO in Pennsylvania?
To the best of my knowledge, and I can be completely wrong, I said one not affiliated. Okay. I know that MSOs have been going around consolidating, buying people up. They may not have actually started to brand themselves as, you know, this is a Curaleaf spot, but my understanding, there was only one license holder left who was still a holdout from that crowd. I can be wrong, but you know, there are only so many licenses in Pennsylvania. So yeah.
Is Fetterman pushing? Is Fetterman pushing for that, or Dr. Oz? Is he even? I don't even know why.
They're still arguing over crudité. They have not
Stop it, Rico.
No, I'm just asking.
Yeah.
No, it's a fair fucking question. We're talking about Pennsylvania.
You know, there's no story with them pushing either of these anything.
This is state politics.
This is a state policy.
And them or care about federal stuff. I think it will be interesting to see Josh Shapiro, who is most likely to be our next governor. I don't think Mastriano really has a shot in hell. He is pro-cannabis. But he's going to be walking into, of course, a conservative controlled legislature, which Pennsylvania is notorious for. We never get along. We are the purplest of places, and we'll see. I do like that this is being proposed by a Republican. I'm hoping that will help get some things across the finish line. That's when we have seen cannabis move forward in Pennsylvania, is when Republicans are backing it.
Oh, yeah.
You Pennsylvanians heard it here from Gretchen, man. Get out there, get vocal about this shit. If you guys actually care about the free market and care about fighting back against these big guys, and how do you get your message across to these politicians?
Rico,
Best,
Rico, we got to go. We got to go to the next story.
Write a letter.
We got to go to the next story. That's right. Write a letter. Thank you, Gretchen. But coming up next, it's Mandy Tingler. She's a cannabis product extraordinaire and serial cannapreneur. She's the co-founder of Camilla Canagram, the woman's business, competition, and head of brand relations for Conception Nurseries. Mandy is a crusader, a female entrepreneur in cannabis, and she loves showing the world that cannabis and motherhood and executive lifestyle all go together. What do you have this morning for us, Mandy Tingler?
We were looking for something positive. I think I've got it. There's some really great data put out in an article yesterday, actually, from thestreet.com. The article is called How a Cannabis Dispensary Could Be a Benefit to Your Neighborhood. So a new study at Rutgers shows positive correlation between cannabis-related businesses and home prices in municipalities. Even in states where legal recreational cannabis is popular, there still exists NIMBY attitudes. The phrase, "not in my backyard," has derailed more than a few government initiatives at the local level. Take Maine, for instance. The Pine Tree State was clearly the recreational cannabis party, legalizing the drug in November 2016. Even still, the state was forced to offer towns money to approve dispensaries in their neighborhoods. The state said 93% of its towns don't have dispensaries. So Maine set aside up to $20,000 per municipality that chooses to opt into Maine's adult use cannabis program. The reality is, no matter if a town has opted in or not, there is cannabis being bought, sold, and consumed there, said Eric Grunderson, director of Maine's Office of Cannabis Policy. But there's an even deeper benefit to having cannabis dispensaries in your neighborhood, according to this new study from Rutgers. There's a positive association between the decision to allow cannabis-related businesses in a neighborhood and that neighborhood's home prices, according to this study authored by Rutgers, associated Professor Michael Hayes and PhD student Prakash Kendall. The study found that the average home sale price increased by 1.6% in municipalities that allowed cannabis-related businesses. That increase is equivalent to a $6,366 increase for the average property included in the study's data. The New Jersey cities that were likely to allow cannabis-related business in their jurisdictions are those with larger populations, lower property values per capita, less affluent residences, and more liberal residents, according to the study. By the fall of 2021, it was clear that New Jersey would have some of the same problems that Maine has with distributing dispensaries. More than 60% of the New Jersey municipalities voted to ban local cannabis-related business in their towns. Cannabis sales brought in $4.6 million in tax revenue in the second quarter for New Jersey, and there are signs that at least a positive correlation between cannabis-related business and home prices. But that doesn't mean the industry is without issues. There is also an uncertainty around potential social costs that new cannabis business might include, such as the potential for an increase in crime and traffic-related incidents. There is also evidence that opposition softens over time, as more than 33% of municipalities that allowed cannabis-related businesses had at least one neighboring municipality that also opted in. New Jersey opened its recreational cannabis market on April 12th, a couple weeks after New Mexico. During the first 10 weeks of the program, the state brought in $4.6 million in state tax revenue on near $80 million in legal recreational cannabis sales between April 21st and June 30th, the state reported. The state of New Jersey approved a social equity exercise tax, $1.10 per ounce of cannabis sold. That tax alone is expected to generate $225,000 before the end of the year. By law, 15% of the generated revenue, or $33,750 based on estimates, is required to be allocated to underage deterrence and prevention programs. For the second quarter, New Jersey saw cannabis recreational sales of nearly 80 million, combined with medical cannabis sales in the state that reported a total of nearly $140 million that quarter. I'm going to skip over the last few paragraphs, but really what we're looking at here is that there is a lot of positive that happens in neighborhoods that are willing to open up their municipalities to cannabis operators. And one fun little nugget that I wanted to add here, when it says that there's not really a whole lot of evidence showing whether or not it causes more law enforcement engagement, the city of Sacramento last year ran a study actually and found, in fact, that there is not any significant increase in law enforcement needs in the city of Sacramento as it pertains to cannabis business operations. So that's me, Mandy Tingler, this morning for High at 9 News.
So I have multiple times, I'd say over 5, been able to be an asset with our camera systems on some other like nefarious shit happening in a neighborhood, because we are so cameraed up in cannabis businesses, and you have to have such a wide perimeter, like home break-in. Somebody got pushed out of a window one time, and we were able to like help find things. So like we've actually been able to be like Crime Stopper, or there was a robbery at a liquor store, like things like that we're able to help thwart because we're so cameraed up, and security being able to be present in a lot of these situations too in some of the neighborhoods. But it's not like real life, like we're helping, we're making sure that the community stays clean, we're like doing all these things where
Yes.
we're bringing positive, actually Elliot and Anna are always listening. I think Anna's on right now. They've been doing Catalyst. I'm from Long Beach, and they basically took a block and are opening restaurants. They like made a commitment to the city, which is like a part of our community engagement. We all get into these licenses, and there's a portion that's like, what are you going to do? How are you going to not be a fucking nuisance in the application? And you put this thing in real life. We need to start holding some of these bigger corporations to the fire on these promises that they put in these applications of the parks that they're going to build and all this shit, because it's the bigger companies that you don't see doing it. It's the people that are like more involved in the community that are like actually following through on this. And like I was saying, Catalyst is like turned around a part of the city that I grew up in, a part of the neighborhood that a lot of people wouldn't want to, walk down, into a much nicer, more, welcoming part of town.
Yeah, and I like to say it's because we have the microscope on us, but also it's part of our DNA. Like cannabis companies have been doing this like long in the days of prohibition. They've been helping out the community. They've been cleaning up all kinds of shit, and they've been doing things to help out people that the government and these big companies have never helped out. So big ups to the cannabis community, and they continue to be that bright shining light that our world needs, period.
Yeah, I agree. I think that my fellow cannabis business operators are some of the most charitable, the most involved in their community. I mean, we came from a movement, and that movement doesn't stop just because adult use is here. And it branches out into so many realms, right? At the end of the day, we want to see improvement in our community and the quality of life of all people. So, however that's delivered.
I always find it so amazing when I see municipalities who are against legalization coming into, because they're trying to save the children and keep everyone safe by not allowing some licensed, law-abiding store into their communities. And it's just insane. It's like you're just signing up to keep the illicit market going, and to just have this stuff run rampant. And it's like, why not open up and have, like Rico says, people who are under the microscope, people who are really having to work to keep their livelihood in their businesses, who want to be a part of communities. I always find it amazing that municipalities are so short-sighted and cannot see what these legal businesses can do for their communities. It's a shame.
Totally agreed. I read another story a month or maybe even a year or so ago that discussed the same type of issue, and actually cited property value increase on commercial spaces when cannabis businesses came into the community. So shout out to cannabis businesses being good neighbors. I know we've had to help law enforcement numerous times for numerous different nefarious things happening within the streets of West Hollywood and San Francisco over the years. And it's been a pleasure to help the city to make sure that the city is safe for everybody. Exactly.
Yeah.
Safe for everyone. Everyone wants to be safe. That's one thing I think Republicans and Democrats, if they don't agree on, need to agree on.
You know, and the other
Make
big
America
thing
safe
to keep in
again.
mind here, and it's proof that cannabis business operators truly do care about their community over everything else, and that is this: we don't get to write off our charitable donations like other businesses do, but we do it because it's necessary and it's the right thing to do.
And nobody wants to get high in a fucked up community.
No.
You wanna,
Oh,
Well,
and
at least
also-
not high off weed. They like getting
Side
high off
note-
other things in fucked up communities.
good point.
Yeah, a lot
Side
of
note-
us get put in the worst neighborhoods, and we go in and we put together community cleanup projects. So
I would like to make sure that everybody knows too, there are, in the state of California specifically, I've had several clients that are not aware of this. You can get your tax money back if you donate product that you've already paid the taxes on, because we prepay our excise tax. So you can get credit back when you do turn products into donation that you've already paid taxes on. So make sure that you are giving your donation information to your accounting department, because you can get credit back from the CDTFA for all the product that you turn into a donation if you've already paid taxes on it. Public service announcement.
Very much true, and I can help you with that too. If you need to find somewhere to donate your product to, just let me know, and I will make sure that it gets to a needy individual.
Well, thank you all for tuning in. That was a really great story, Mandy, to hear that something that we all know, that cannabis is actually making the community better. So catch us Monday through Friday at 9 a.m. Pacific and high noon on the East Coast. Thanks to our sponsors, audience, supporters, and to the haters for still talking about us, to True Classic and LAXCC for helping us eat, to the correspondents for being absolutely amazing, for everyone on the back end helping keep us together. Thank you to Weed for helping us be funny, and 3 is 4 for being awesome trippy house cats and helping us sound like we actually know what we're doing. Thanks again, guys, for getting high at 9 with us. Run the outro music.
Wow, you cat.
You are tuned in to the High at 9 News Hour, where you will hear from cannabis industry experts and professionals from around the country talk about important topics while shining light on global issues and discussing cannabis as it relates to politics, regulation and reform, data and technology, science, research and medicine, family and parenting, art, celebs and entertainment, fitness, sports, mental health and wellness, and plant-based medicines and enthogenics. Together, we are building a stronger community, fighting the stigma and creating change. With your hosts, Jason Beck, Rico Lamitte, and Nichole West, joined by special industry expert correspondents from around the country and daily antics brought to you by Cannabis. Coming to you live Monday through Friday at 9 a.m. Pacific Time. Thank you for getting high at 9 with us.